Welcome back to the Not Yet Adults podcast. This, of course, is a podcast starring Collin Geffrey and myself, Eric Zayas, as we navigate the trials and tribulations of adulthood as young adults, and, we just try to figure stuff out.
I feel like Trials and Tribulations is probably like a hidden object adventure game on the PC, like where it's like, find these 12 dwarves inside the playpen in order to unlock the ice world or something.
Are you talking about like a point and click thing, but like with the what were those books where it was like, I think they're called I Spies? Remember that? I Spy, and it had like a bunch of random stuff.
Yeah, and there were like computer versions where like you'd hover your mouse over everything, and when you click on the thing, it's like, oh, you get 10 points, or you get the key to unlock the next world or whatever. Yeah, I feel like Trials and Tribulations I feel like that's probably one of them at some point. That just sounds like one. But I don't know. Eric, how's your week going, buddy? What's been happening?
Things are developing as far as like moving out situation. That's not grammatically correct, but a couple friends and I are soon going to be, at least the plan is, I maybe don't even want to publicly say this because if it doesn't happen then it's like disappointing, but we're going to be meeting up soon to sign a lease on a house in Tacoma that we're all going to be moving into and paying rent, and so I'm going to be moving out pretty soon, which is like sooner than I expected to move out. And like I've done the math with like my finances and how much I make, and like I can do it, and it's all very exciting.
Are you nervous that things developed that quickly, or are you a little bit anxious? Or I have a million questions because there's so much about that process. Like there's the credit and the relationships with the other people and figuring out the finances and all that. So I mean, like, what's going through your head right now?
Definitely nervous, definitely excited. I didn't think I could afford it at first, like, because it's a pretty big house, and we might not have to save this for another episode, but because it could be a whole topic, and I don't want to take away from the topic we already have. It's very exciting, and like originally it was gonna be just me and two other friends, so it was 3 people, and then the rent was like significantly higher, like $150 more, and I was like, ooh, I can't do this. And then we found a 4th person. Now like it's like doable, and it's, I don't know, I was definitely not expecting to move out this soon, and in certain ways it's a bad idea because I'd be paying for rent like before getting a job and stuff, but I think it'll work out because it's like in Tacoma, so it's going to be like, I plan on finding a job in Tacoma, so the commute's going to be shorter. This is like this is the move out situation I've been waiting for. Like, this location's really nice, and the house is really nice, and the people I'm moving in with, I'm like really excited to moving in with. So
what's the commute like from the new house to your current job?
It's not too bad. It's I thought it would be a lot longer, but I looked it up on Google Maps, and it's only a few minutes more because the house is really close to the highway. So it's also dependent upon like, if the highway's got a lot of traffic, that could drastically change the commute. So I have to keep an eye on that.
That's awesome, man. Let me know. I'm really curious to hear how that develops, and if you decide within the next day or two that you want me to cut this, just let me know, and we can do that. But no, that's really awesome, man. That's exciting.
Yeah, exciting changes. What about you, man? How have you been?
Yeah. I mean, kind of similar vein of you, minus the whole moving out thing of like, there's stuff happening that I'm excited about, but I also don't necessarily want to jinx it and talk about it too much. So I'll just say I've been on a few interviews in the last week, and things are going well. I'm hoping to have a definitive, like, this is a cool thing that happens soon. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. I hate that person who's like, man, things are going really well for me. There's a lot of doors opening, a lot of opportunities, and they're just talking out of their butt, and
they can't say, like, I don't know. It's like there's certain things like in our lives that you like, that looks like it's starting to move in a certain way that can be exciting, but then like I've noticed this more with like romantic stuff, like if I'm talking to a girl and like it looks like something's happening, as soon as I tell people about them, then we just like stop talking or something. So I got in the habit of like trying really hard not to tell people about, like, which kind of sucks because if I'm excited about someone, I want to talk about them, but then like if it doesn't go anywhere, then the next time I see that person I told them about asks me like, well, hey, what's the update with so and so, and I have to say like, oh yeah, that didn't go anywhere, and it's like disappointing for me, disappointing for them. I have to like think about it again, like, so. But like with like job opportunities, it's a very similar thing where you like want to talk about something you're excited about, but like if it's nothing's written down, nothing's set in stone, you might not want to talk about it.
Well, and not to overinflate our status by any means, but it's even harder when you're doing that on any sort of content on the internet, right? Because then you're putting it out there in perpetuity for people to listen to, and it's magnified. It's not like you're having a conversation with one person, you're having a conversation with every single person who's listening. And so we mention one thing, and theoretically anyone could be like, "Oh, whatever happened with that?" When maybe it was just a passing comment we made just because of a good feeling and nothing more. So it's hard. You don't want to say too much when it's kind of a more permanent setting you're talking to.
With that being said, Colin and I would like to announce that we have both signed a contract to be part of a huge podcast conglomerate.
Yeah, we got bought out. Really weird that they decided to buy us out. I guess they heard that we passed 1,000 listens. No big deal, humble brag. But yeah, so we are selling out like you would not believe. We just don't care at all. We were in it for the money the whole time.
This part might not be true at all.
Yeah, it might. Well, I mean, time will tell. I guess we'll see.
So, Colin, what do you want to talk about this week?
Eric, I want to talk kind of the running joke you and I have is we keep these lists of topics we want to do. And every time I read my list, it's like 5 or 6 or 7 really just tough, sad topics.
Let's just be fully transparent here and include the fact that it's your list. I think my only like submission to the list has been like dancing, which is the like only fun topic on there.
Which we will do at some point. And that's not to say that you don't contribute topics. I think we've actually probably done at least as many of your topics for episodes, if not more. It's literally the actual list that's on my phone is yeah, mostly mine. But one we've kind of been workshopping a little bit and that we wanted to jump into today is sort of insecurities and kind of this idea of there's all these things about yourself that you don't necessarily like and that you're not comfortable with, and when you're thinking about it, it kind of feels like the whole world is staring at only that part of you, and just how weird and messed up of a feeling that is. And insecurities by their very nature are these things that, as we kind of talked about in the pre-show, you kind of like put in a drawer and ignore and try not to think about for as long as you possibly can. And today, I think may, if nothing else, just be a little bit therapeutic for you and me of just kind of getting it out there, like talking about a couple of our insecurities and how we feel about the whole thing and how strange the idea of insecurities are just at a, general widespread level. So I'll put you on the spot right now, Eric. What do you hate about yourself? What do you just not like?
If we're gonna start with like tangible insecurities, as far as appearance, and we talked about this in the style episode, I really need to like put more work. I feel like I need to put more work into like fashion. So like fashion isn't really a thing. I mean, not to repeat the style episode too much, but fashion isn't really a thing that like guys think about as much as women. I feel, at least in like our like Western culture. But I definitely want to get into a wider variety of clothing other than like graphic T-shirts and jeans, which I always wear, and like a hoodie or a jacket. My friend Malik has this, like the last time we hung out, or one of the last times we hung out rather, he has this like it's like a denim jacket with like, how do you explain it? It kind of like has a fur, or not a fur, like a cotton type material on the inside, and it's really comfortable, and I wear it, and it's something I would never think of wearing, but when I put it on, I'm like, oh shit, this is dope. And I even asked him like, can I have this? And he's like, no, definitely not. And I was like, I get that. And then he said to me like, oh, but I can tell you about where I got it from, and it's this vintage clothing store in Tacoma called Scorpio Rising.
That is an awesome name. That is the coolest clothing store I've ever heard of.
It's such an awesome name. It's the kind of name you'd expect, like, oh, this is a clothing here, it's got to be dope. So I really want to like go there and like look into like vintage clothing, and like like I want to like buy plaid and like try that out, because I don't think I've ever owned anything that's plaid, but like it's something you see people like hipsters and like the Pacific Northwest type guys wear all the time.
Well, and plaid and denim are things that are just always going to be in. Like those never totally go out of style. I mean, you mentioned going to Scorpio Rising and stuff. I just keep thinking it's a shame I don't live over there anymore. We could be like the friends that like go just try clothes and give each other criticism and that kind of stuff. We
could be one of those like late 80s, early 90s like rom-coms where there's a a scene where they go to the mall and they try out different outfits, and the friend comes out with like a ridiculous outfit, and the friend waiting for them is like shakes their head a couple
And
times
Pretty
until they
Woman's
come
playing
out.
in the background.
Exactly.
Having the montage of all the clothes.
And then there's
yeah.
the like finally get the like the head nod and the smile and the thumbs up.
And it's just a white T-shirt and jeans. That's
It's
all
just
it
a
is.
normal. It's like what they came in wearing.
I mean, you gotta go with what you got.
That's just like something I'm gonna like change that I mean, like the other thing I want to change I have control over too, but this one I feel like with fashion I have a lot more control. But with like more of a physical insecurity, I don't think I'm out of shape, but I'd rather like I definitely want to work out more and exercise and gain more muscle mass. Like I'm definitely not like I think I look fine. I don't think I'm overweight or anything, but I'm definitely not super in shape. And I would really like, to have muscles and like, be more like attractive in that sense.
Not to enable you, but like show me one person who wouldn't say that. You know what I mean? Like no matter how good shape you're in, everyone wants to be in better shape.
And also like people who exercise all the time and have like muscle mass, like I'm sure they have their own insecurities that might be different. Like maybe they think like, they have like probably a higher standard of what it means to be fit, and so like I might look at them and be like, your muscle goals, you're like what I want to be, and they're like, oh well, I'm not where I want to be.
I think I've told this story on the podcast before, I'm not sure, but our dear friend Riley from Late Night, friend of the show, he talked me into working out with him one time. I think I told this show, but I'll just give the real quick version. And I went in there to the gym at PLU, first time I'd ever set foot in there, and within 10 seconds, I immediately was like, I am not supposed to be here. Just looking around at everyone else and how seriously they were taking it, and they knew what they were doing. And I was like, okay, so I was treating it like a science, like exercise. Like I was asking Riley,
my feet
okay,
here.
Exactly. And I was like to Riley, and what's the name of this? And how do I do this? Am I doing this right? And
This
like,
is called a treadmill.
This is called a treadmill. Yeah. It was just like, I am just so not in the right place. But I imagine, like for me, it was looking up at these people as like, oh my God, you're like gods and goddesses. You know what you're doing in a gym. But for them, even when you get in shape or when you're accustomed to that lifestyle, there's always, that thing on the horizon you're trying to get to. You're never done when it comes to working out. So yeah, I think those are, I mean, not particularly unique insecurities. I feel like that's things that a lot of people feel about themselves. Yeah. For me, it's like, I consider myself to be a very confident, maybe not very confident, fairly confident person, but there's those couple things that I can't seem to get over. My teeth have always been one of them. My teeth, yeah. When I was like 13 or 14, I went to an orthodontist, and the orthodontist was like, "Oh, you
got bad teeth."
Well, oh man, you're screwed, kid. This is bad. Which, by the way, an orthodontist will never say because they love taking your money. But anyways, he was like, "Oh, your teeth are basically going to straighten themselves out. You don't need braces." And my teeth, I've had people tell me they're not that crooked, but anytime I look at my teeth in the mirror, I'm just like, I just don't like how they look. They just look all weird and jagged, and just doesn't seem like they're the right shape. I've thought about getting like some sort of Invisalign or something because I don't want to go through braces. And according to orthodontists, I don't need braces, but I still feel like I need something. So I've thought about getting some sort of an Invisalign. And the color of my teeth has also just always been kind of yellow. And it's just something I'm very self-conscious about. It's part of the reason, like I think you pointed out one time, like, hey, why the hell don't you smile in pictures? And it's like, because I hate my teeth. That's always been what it is. And so like a couple months ago, I started using whitening strips as like a confidence booster. Like let's just do this. Let's see how it works. And I found they helped a little bit. They didn't take as well as I was hoping, but Rome wasn't built in a day. So I'm keeping at it and using them every now and again. But no, I've always tried really hard to take good care of my teeth, and I brush twice a day, and I floss, and I mouthwash and all that. And it kind of feels like genetics, just like, nah, sorry, man, you just don't get it. But yeah, my teeth is one of them. For a long time, I would have said my height, but I feel like I've gotten pretty comfortable with that. As like I'm like 5'10". That's like a perfectly average height. Like there's nothing remarkably large or small about that. So yeah, that's my height. I feel like I've kind of grown into.
Something like height is a pretty I feel like that's a very like relatable insecurity, obviously, and a unique thing about height, unique to like some of the things like I've talked about so far, is that you can't do anything to fix your height. You can't, like, you can, like, I can exercise to get muscles and stuff, but you can't exercise to get taller.
I mean, the best you can do is like put like lifts in your shoes or something, and even then, that's like not a permanent thing. That's
Yeah, you can try to do things to appear to be taller, but like with height, you kind of just like gotta look at yourself and be like, well, this is how tall I am, and like once you've gone through puberty and you stay at that height forever, and then I think like if anything, when you get really old, you maybe like even shrink down a little bit, but you can't.
you still kind of have that thought in the back of your head. I definitely have this sometimes. Like, maybe I can just get like 1 more inch just on the tail end of puberty here. Just maybe just get a little bit taller. Just kind of sneak it in. But I think you make a great point, which is eventually you just kind of have to look in the mirror and be like, you know what, this is what I'm dealing with. This is what I got. Another one for me. This is a small one, and it's something I'm getting better about. But just my facial hair, man. I just wish I could grow a full beard, not even a thick beard, but just a full beard. There's this patch, kind of above my chin, right underneath my lower lip. Just nothing grows. And I'm just like, man, I'm so close. The sides come in, the mustache comes in, the neck comes in, and then nothing on the bottom. It's just nothing there, and that's just like. There's not really anything you can do about that. It's one of those genetic things of either you got it or you don't. But I know some people say that their beards grow in more fully as they age and have trimmed it and shaved it more. So maybe we'll see. Who knows?
It's also one of those things that like if you shave like. It's like the more you shave, the faster it grows, or something like that, which seems like counterintuitive, but
I've always heard that, and I've always accepted that as common knowledge. And then I want to say like 6 or 7 months ago, someone told me that was like a myth, and I looked it up, and apparently there's no scientific basis for it in theory. But I've always found that to be the case, so I really don't know. I'm not sure what the consensus is on that one. But yeah, that's it for me. The last one I wanted to mention is. I hope this doesn't like offend people. I don't mean it to come across that way. But is my weight. I've always been like insecure about the fact that I'm underweight, and I have been my whole life. And that's not like I've had people, not that this happens often with guys. I'm not going to say like this is a daily occurrence, but I've had people being like, oh, are you sure you're eating enough? Or are you like anorexic or what's going on? Because I've always been very skinny. And as anyone who knows me will know, I pretty much just eat whatever the heck I want. I don't count calories. I don't do anything. It's just call it metabolism, call it genetics, call it whatever you want. I've always been underweight my whole life, no matter what I've eaten. And that's something I've always been kind of self-conscious about of like, even if my height is okay, I feel like a lot of times I come across as, or I feel myself as small or too skinny or too thin. And, I've tried a few different diets, and I've tried to eat like high protein, high calorie foods, and, not to throw my parents under the bus, but that was something growing up that they kind of drilled in my head, like, you need more calories, you need more calories, you need more calories. And so I've always felt like I'm kind of not where I need to be there. And I think a lot of that is psychological.
Yeah. I think, I mean, when it comes down to it, some boys are just skinny. And really just some people are just skinny. Some people are, it's like, that's, like there's stuff you can do about it, but like, you can only do so much if you just have like a really fast metabolism that's like just, too fast for you to catch up to it.
And like I hear people, obviously weight loss is a very common theme among people, especially Americans, of short and long-term goals, is I want to lose weight. And I feel so almost ashamed or selfish. And I'm like, man, what I wouldn't give to just gain like 15 pounds, just be like a normal, even low end of normal. Cause I'm like, I weigh like 130. So I'm like not heavy at all. And so I'm just like, man, just a few more, just so I'm on the low end of normal. But it is what it is, and obviously there's way worse problems to have. But it's just something I'm self-conscious about, man. I just can't get over it. I don't know.
You shouldn't feel that just because like you hear so many people talk about like wanting to lose weight rather than like wanting to gain weight. You shouldn't feel like your insecurity is invalidated, because it's still for you. It might not be a problem that like other people have, but for you feel that it's like an issue. Yeah.
Well, and I appreciate you saying that. And I know on paper that that's true. I know in my heart that that's true, but it's still hard whenever you hear people of like, man, I'm really got to put in the work to lose weight. And I'm just like, oh man, I have like the opposite problem as everyone I'm talking to, but you're absolutely correct. It's no struggle is universal. And so it's you just gotta, figure out what your strengths and weaknesses are and work on those. Eric, we've kind of spent a lot of time on physical insecurities and things that you can point out and say, I don't like this about myself. And that's fine. I feel like that's probably more often than not the insecurities people have and can relate to. But I want to touch on sort of intangible insecurities. So maybe skills you have or don't have, or things about your personality, or maybe things you wish you would know. Where's maybe an area or two in that you don't feel too comfortable?
Well, I definitely have an insecurity when it comes to like skills, because even though like I have like humble brag a bachelor's degree, uh, and no big deal, I still feel like I don't have a lot of like marketable skills. Like on paper I do, but I think it like my um like so many people who we go to school with, and like you hear about like not don't just do classes, but they do like 5 million extracurricular stuff.
Oh my God. If I have to hear about one more internship.
I know, and it's like, and I always think like, oh, that's, you're overworking yourself, you're doing too much. But then like right out of college they get jobs because they can like they have a really nice resume, and they have physical things they can point to that says like, here is proof that I can do this job that I'm applying for because I did all this like stuff outside of my classes, you know what I mean? So I feel insecure about like when I'm applying for jobs and they say like, oh, do you have so many years of experience? Like, well, I mean, I took classes, you know, that to get a degree for this field that you're referring to, but like as far as like examples of like this, that, and the other thing, I don't have as many as I feel that I should. So I wish.
No, I haven't worked in marketing for 5 years and been certified. What do you want from me?
To get this entry level job that's gonna pay only minimum wage, like, yeah. Oh God, that's gonna be a whole topic for another episode. Like so many.
Dude, believe me, that hits close to home right now. We're both in the thick of that. But yeah,
just like pay me at least like this month. Why are you trying to give me? Anyways, okay.
Or just for the love of God, like I guarantee you, I can do it. Just give me a shot. Of like you have to go through more work to get the job than to do the job, and 50% of case. I'm just throwing statistics out there for the hell of it, but it's you can do it, and the hard part is convincing them of that. And that's anyway. We're out off in the weeds, but that hits close to home right now.
But yeah, it's just like that's something that throughout my life I just and like not just in college, but in high school and in junior high, I didn't really do a lot of like extracurricular stuff, or didn't participate in a whole lot of clubs and stuff. So I really wish I had just more. It's not even just about skills, it's about experiences. I'm insecure about my lack of like taking advantage of all the experiences I could have had throughout life. But like, now that like I've graduated, that like being the kind of person that doesn't really, I mean, I've been part of like groups at PLU, but like I haven't really done as many internships as I feel like I could have. I haven't really made physical, like I haven't really edited a lot of videos on my own free time, or written copy and stuff for like journalist companies like newspapers or like marketing firms or whatever. So like on paper, like I feel like my resume should be more filled with things, and like I should have just those experiences that I can point to. But I'm just worried, and like that also extends to not just like being insecure and like having trouble finding jobs, but also like sometimes I look into myself and I think while I'm applying for this stuff, like, could I do this job? Like, am I, like, I don't have experience, a lot of things I can point to that act as examples, so maybe I'm actually just like not good enough and not prepared. And yeah, even though I have a degree, I don't know if like I'm insecure, of course, that I'll end up using it, you know what I mean?
Which and I don't mean to speak for you, but I feel like that's kind of Stockholm Syndrome after a while of you're good enough for something, but after enough people not believing you are, or maybe imposter syndrome's a better thing to say, is like, oh crap, what if I actually am not good enough? What if I'm actually not as good as I think I am? And all these people are seeing something that I'm not in myself. And that's so freaking hard, especially with the job search, which I hate that we're steering everything towards, but that's a huge part of your and I's life right now.
Oh yeah.
Is, you go on application after application, interview after interview, and you start to wonder, man, am I just not as good as I thought I was? Or is it something that the interview's not seeing in me? And that's hard. It's hard not to feel insecure about that, because you're like, what am I doing wrong, man? Other people have jobs. Other people find this stuff.
Get out of my head, you witch. You're vocalizing my insecurities perfectly.
But I mean, that's what we're knee deep in right now. And I feel like that's when this podcast is at its best, is when we're just real and raw and saying like, here's where we're at. But
what about you, Colin?
Yeah,
I'm gonna turn it on you now.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah, I this is a hard one to vocalize, and I don't know. Maybe this will resonate with people, maybe it won't. I'm not sure, but I'm very interested in video, and I've worked in production and directing and editing and all these things. And one thing I've always been aware of is the fact that often I am on the lower end, if not the lowest end of technical knowledge in the room. Of like, I understand editing and I understand directing and I understand production, but the second someone gets into the weeds about specifics on hardware or editing software, technical directing terms and stuff, my eyes start to glaze over because like that's just not how I view those things. I view them kind of the heart behind it and the ideals behind it and sort of why you're doing it. I see it from more of a maybe holistic approach, I guess. I don't really get in the weeds of the real technical stuff. And so like we'll have friends like working on late night. I don't mean to throw him under the bus at all, but Josh Wiersma, who's an amazing guy,
That's the first person I thought of when you talked about that.
who can frickin' he knows everything about cameras. Like he can talk to you till he's blue in the face about any kind of camera.
And legitimately, he has talked to me. So I'm not till he's blue in the face, but like, when you get him going, he doesn't stop for a while. It's great.
And for the record, I'm not implying that that's bad at all. That's an incredible skill set, and it's the sort of, in fact, quite the opposite. I often feel like somewhat insignificant by comparison because like I may understand how to get from point A to point B when it comes to directing or production or whatever it may be, but when it's really in the weeds and you have to know the really technical stuff, I immediately realize, man, what I know is really just surface level at best. I really just know the bare bones. And then you have people who have really studied the heart of video or the heart of directing and really know the core aspects of it. And you just feel so small, man. You're just like, man, what do I know about this really? And I mean, I think the good thing about the arts is at the end of the day, technical knowledge only gets you so far. You have to have a certain vision and a certain charisma and personality too. It's not just technical knowledge.
But definitely heard, like, I've heard multiple times that like, even if you're an artist, you need to. I think I even like there was like a lecture in a communications class about this. Like, artists need to be to an extent a technician, because if you want to be a painter and don't know like how to use your tools, then you're not going to be a good painter. So even though it seems like less, like there's less heart to knowing all the like technical stuff, it's definitely like an important part of any art form.
I watch a lot of Casey Neistat, and he made this point about like film and movies and things like that. And this is going to be a long episode, sorry, but like who cares? We're having fun. He said that the only thing in your movie that can never be bad is story. No one is going to forgive your movie for having a bad story. Every other single thing can be bad, and people will forgive it if the story's good enough. But if the story is not good, everything else will suffer. And that's how I kind of feel is like, in terms of technical aspects, you don't have to have a perfectly shot, well lit, well acted, well directed movie for it to be good. Things can succeed in spite of you. But if you have all of that foundation, you are exponentially increasing your chances at being good. And I feel like for me, my skill set, I'm not saying I'm like an idiot when it comes to the technical aspects of production, but like I am well aware of the fact that anytime I'm in the room, there are a number of people who know way more than me about way more of what we're doing, and that's hard when you feel like you kind of have to lean on this crutch of, okay, well, what do I mean? What's my emotion going into this? What's kind of my ideology? I feel like I lean on that more than I lean on my technical ability, and that can be hard, especially in an industry or in a group where technical knowledge is very much valued. And so anyway, I apologize for going off on a tangent, but that's something that's something for me is just that technical knowledge. And I don't even know if I necessarily would change that. I like a lot about myself, and I think taking that holistic approach to a lot of things is kind of who I am, but it definitely leads to some situations where I feel like I'm naked in a room of people that know what they're doing and I just have no idea. So Eric, that's our sort of extended therapy session about insecurities and things we're dealing with. And I think our hope kind of, I don't mean to speak for you, but our hope in putting this out there and just kind of getting naked and saying, hey, here's the things about myself that I'm not super comfortable with. I think the hope is kind of let other people know it's okay to do that. And that it can be therapeutic of those things that you shove in a drawer and you never want to think about them sometimes. Vocalize them if you can.
Yeah, it's good to get it out. Yeah, it's good to get it out, like get it off your chest, so to speak. Like that's a cliche saying, but it's cliche because it's said so much because it's so true.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing you and I had talked about in the pre-show is so that we don't end this on a 35-minute here's all the terrible things about us note, is for us to both like pay a compliment to each other of something we both like about each other. So do you want to start first, or do you want me
Yeah,
to?
I'd like to go first if you
Okay.
don't mind, Colin. It's so funny that you say like that you. I just realized how bad this can sound, but it's funny to
You're
hear
the
you
freaking
say
worst,
like
Colin. I
you're.
can't think of anything. It's yeah.
No, it's funny to hear you say like you are insecure about your lack of technical knowledge, because one thing like I always thought about like when working with you is this guy looks like he knows what he's doing. Like when I think of like what a director should like, I'm like, oh, it's Colin, because you've got this like presentation, this like this way you present yourself, in this air to you where you're like like maybe you don't know 100% like of the technical mumbo jumbo of a camera, but like you're a quick learner, you pick things up quickly, you like manage stress really well, which is like incredibly important for someone in a leadership role of any kind, especially like a director role. And I think you lead really well. I think it comes down to you're just a good leader, because a good leader doesn't need to necessarily to know 100% of every aspect of it, but they need to be able to work with what they do know and be able to like organize people who do know. And I think that's even more important than learn. Like you can learn, you can know like 100% of this one, how like one part of the whole clockwork mechanism works, but then like you can only go so far. Whereas like if you know how to like find and organize everyone who does know, then then the clockwork mechanism works. This metaphor is getting really weird, but I think it comes down to you just being a really good leader and like having a calm air to you, which I think is really good.
Well, I really appreciate you saying that, man. That means the world to me. We can't hug right now, but I'm like, oh, thank you, Eric, so much. But I mean, I do want to make a point there, and that's that neither of those skill sets are any more or less valuable than the other. Whether it's production or anything else, and obviously we talk about video production a lot because that's what you and I are into. But anything where you're on a team, you have to have the people who really know the heart of what you're doing, and you have to have those people who really know the technical side of what you're doing. You have to have both. You just do, and it's for me, I feel like I gravitate more towards the emotional side, and I have to remind myself that's not any less important. And to technical people out there who feel like maybe you don't get the admiration that directors or writers or creatives or whatever get, I guarantee you're important, man, and people are leaning on you for support more than you probably know. But yeah, I really appreciate you saying that, man.
No problem.
As far as you, the thing that always comes to mind when I think of you is something that I feel like is not necessarily a common compliment or a common thing that people think about, but I think you are a tremendous listener. I think you have an air about you where you're not always talking, and sometimes I'll say something or I'll hear someone else say something and you don't always respond, and I have to remind myself that doesn't mean he's not listening. That just means he's not always the guy to say something immediately. If you kind of know what I mean. You'll often bring up something that I said or something that happened in passing that I didn't even know you were there for, or I didn't even remember myself. And I realized like, oh crap, he's paying way more attention than a lot of people give him credit for. And that's not to say we're all talking crap about you behind your back, but I truthfully believe that you're just a very, very attentive listener, and that you pay attention to not just what people are saying, but what they're feeling and sort of the behavior in the room. And that's something I have to remind myself of is, just because someone's not talking doesn't mean they don't care, and it doesn't mean they're not engaged. And I think that's something you do really well, is just listen and be receptive to what other people are thinking. So.
I'm so sorry. I was on my phone for that whole thing. I did not.
Jesus Christ,
I wasn't
Eric!
paying attention
God,
to what you.
it's the only compliment I'm going to give for the rest of the year, and you blew it.
Sorry. As soon as you start, first of all, I really appreciate that. Thank you. I think it's like definitely have the personality type of someone who doesn't feel the need necessarily to like, say respond whenever someone's like talking, and like I'm definitely a sit back and absorb all the information and process it before speaking kind of guy, but yeah, I do appreciate that. And as soon as you started talking, I was like, oh, this is a great compliment. And then I immediately thought, what would be really funny is if I like listened to the whole thing and then pretended like I didn't.
Hey man, that's entertainment. That's showbiz. It's always thinking of the next bit.
It's
always
all
thinking of
about
the next
show
joke.
business,
Yeah.
baby.
Yeah. Well, Eric, I gotta say, I think this was a great episode from us. I think this was just us kind of laying it out there and being real and raw and kind of talking about something that a lot of people don't like talking about. So I know you always love it when I do this, but if I had to put you on the spot and you kind of had advice for people about insecurities or dealing with things they don't necessarily like about themselves, what would you kind of give the people at home listening?
I think it's important to know that any insecurity you have, like, you're not alone, because literally, how many billions of people are on this earth? 7 or 8 billion people, and there's definitely like hundreds of thousands of people at least with the exact same insecurity you have, so you're not alone in that. And it's easy to say, like, don't let that discourage you, but like in practice it's hard to be like, oh, okay, I'll the insecurity's gone. Like, that doesn't really work that way. But I would just say, like, just know that you're not alone, and like, I don't know what else to say. Like, you're not alone, and like you're the thing you don't like about yourself, it's justified, and like there's some things you can change about, some things you can't change about. I think it's important to recognize the difference between those two, because if you can't change it, then like trying to change something you can't change is like hitting your head against a brick wall. You're not going to make any progress, and you're just getting up with a headache. So recognize the things you can't change and work more towards working on the things you don't like about yourself so that you can change, as long as you make a change in more of a healthy, positive way.
Don't lose sleep over the fact that you're not taller. You're not gonna fix that one anytime soon.
Oh yeah, that's your height.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a great point. If I could just tack one thing on there, and I'll make it quick because I think I've said it on the podcast before, but when you're passing someone on the street that you walk by, they have a dozen, if not more, things about themselves that they're insecure about.
Mm-hmm.
Just try, or don't, but just think about it, to identify what a stranger's insecurities are about themselves. I guarantee you probably couldn't. And that is so powerful to me, that the things you're self-conscious about, whether it's your beard, your teeth, or your clothes, or whatever it is, you feel like everyone's staring right at that because that's what you're insecure about, but you probably couldn't identify what that thing is for a stranger. And I think that just speaks volumes as to, we are our own worst critics. And it's so cliche, but it's true, is you are always harder on yourself than anyone else will be. And just remember that, like, it's probably not as bad as you think. Like, your hair's not that bad. Your beard's not that, whatever it is, it's, no one cares anywhere near as much about that thing as you do. And so if you can just get to a point, and I'm not pretending to be perfect, this is something I need to tell myself more often than I do. But if you can just get to a point where you're like, hey, I like myself. You look okay. Your teeth aren't that bad. Your beard's not that bad. Whatever. Then, I think you'll kind of radiate this aura that people will see. Not to get too, metaphysical or whatever. But just this, believe in yourself, because that's where it starts. And most of the time, the things you care about, not liking about yourself, no one would even think about themselves. So
100%. You can't say, but I'm giving a thumbs up.
Heck yeah, man. We'll splice in 2 seconds of video of just you putting it a thumbs up just for the YouTube crowd, and then we go right back to audio. Well, folks, this has been episode 25. Holy cow, man. We've done a bunch of these things. We've done a whole lot. But yeah, this is episode 25 of the Not Yet Adults podcast. Remember, you can get the podcast every Monday and Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific time on YouTube, SoundCloud, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and all other podcast services. We also are all across the social media sphere on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, as well as on our own subreddit, r/NotYetAdults, and all the social accounts are at Not Yet Adults as well. If you could do us a favor, head on over to Apple Podcasts or iTunes if you're on iOS and leave us a rating and review. It just takes a couple minutes out of your day, and it helps the podcast get seen and listened to by more people. As a special thank you to all the folks who are listening on SoundCloud. We've been popping off there lately. We're not really sure why, but it's been really good. It's been a really good last couple weeks as far as the numbers go. So thank you all so much. Even if you're not on SoundCloud, however you support this podcast, it means the world to us, because we put a lot of work into it, and when we see people listening and enjoying what we do, that just makes it all worth it. So we will be back this Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific time talking about something new, and we are very much looking forward to it. So thanks for listening, and until next time, this has been Not Yet Adults.
Bye-bye.